Good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, guests, fellow change makers. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you to the symposium on how universities can measure impact through community engagement. As we know, we are at a time when higher education institutions are being called upon to show, not just tell, how we contribute to a better and more just and more equitable society. And the question is no longer if we can make an impact, but how we can do it. And then also, how do we sustain it? So I'm Loretta Ferris. I'm the Vice Principal Academic at the University of Pretoria, and community engagement is part of my portfolio. And we wanted to arrange this forum to grapple with the complexity of impact. What does it truly mean? How do we define it in diverse contexts? And crucially, how do we measure it? And so we have four amazing speakers that's going to talk to this. And I will not be giving bios, but just do a short introduction of each. And I hope that by the end of the day, we'll have a better idea of how we get to impact. So how we're going to manage this is that we'll have two speakers that'll go first. They're going to do a joint presentation, and then it'll be followed by two other speakers. Each of them will speak for about 10 minutes each. And then we'll do, at the end of all four speakers, we'll do a Q&A. And so you can post your questions in the chat box, and we will try and get through as many of them as possible. So let me start by introducing the first two speakers, Dr. Martina Jordan, who's Head of Community Engagement Research and Postgraduate Students at the University of Pretoria and based at our Mamelodi campus, and then Professor Audrey Falk, who's the Program Director and also Professor of Community Engagement at Merrimack College. And these two colleagues have been working together for quite a few years, and hence the joint presentation. So over to you, Martina and Audrey.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I'm excited to kick off this presentation. So our presentation is intended to set the stage for the full session that we have today. And so that is our title, How Do Universities Measure Their Social Impact, Setting the Stage. My name is Audrey Falk. I'm the director of our master's program in community engagement, which is transitioning actually to a program in nonprofit management and community engagement beginning in September. I'm with the Merrimack College in the US. Our program is fully online with required synchronous components, and it prepares students for careers in community engagement and nonprofit and service. Again, we are at Merrimack College, and these are the schools. We also are just right now adding a graduate school of counseling and social work to our schools. We have about 6,000 students, and we are a Catholic, Augustinian, and private institution founded in 1947. Next slide. So these are some of the bigger questions that we've been thinking of as we've been preparing for our session today. Can we advance change? What sorts of changes are we seeking as institutions and as programs within higher education? How do we create change through equitable partnerships, through reciprocity? And how do these changes advance the public good? And how do we articulate the positive work we're doing in ways that are uplifting and avoid a white savior complex narrative? Thank you. So one thing that became immediately apparent as Martina and I were developing our presentation is that when we're thinking about impact, we need to be thinking about mission, vision, values, and strategic plan. And so obviously the impact we're looking to kind of must align with all of those things. Therefore, I decided to include our mission statements here on this slide. So I've got the mission statements for Merrimack College, for my School of Education and Social Policy, and then also for my program, Nonprofit Management and Community Engagement. And if you read these mission statements, you'll see that there is a component of public good reflected in each of them. And so that's kind of just a bigger picture message. Thanks. We also thought a lot about what is it we're trying to impact anyway. And so these bullets give some ideas of the kinds of impact we might be looking to make. We're thinking about things like education and understanding among our students, as well as our communities, about social issues, dispositions and attitudes that we may wish to change. We might be seeking to make impact related to institutional policies or governmental policies, thinking about things like retention and graduation, not only for our higher education students, but also for pre-K through 12 students at the lower levels of education as well. And things like health and wellness, again, for our student body, but also for our collective communities. And much more big picture, we're thinking about things like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and all sorts of issues like poverty and hunger and clean water and clean energy and climate change. I also have just a quote from a student here on this slide, just to share the voice of one of our students talking about the impact of our program on her life and her community, and remembering that ultimately, as we educate our students to be responsible citizens and responsible community members, that is one of the most important ways that higher education institutions do impact their local communities and the global community as well. How we define impact is dependent on our theory of change. And our theory of change helps us show those causal relationships between our interventions and the changes that we are seeking to make. And short-term goals that we have as units, programs, departments within our higher education students, all feed into those longer-term social impacts that our institutions seek to make more broadly. And that's why it's important that we have sustained partnerships over time, because if we want to have longer-term impact, we really have to have sustained partnership. And the collective impact piece is how all of these different units in an institution can build their programs and goals toward those longer term social impact visions of our institutions. So at the more kind of level of the program or unit that we may be directing, we may be looking at SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals that we can articulate for the different initiatives that we have directed at the public and the public good. I'm going to share 6 different frameworks with you, just very briefly, that institutions can use to think about how they are measuring social impact. The first of these is Andrew Furco's self-assessment rubric for institutionalizing service learning in higher education. This model looks at 5 specific dimensions, including philosophy and mission of service learning, faculty support for and involvement in service learning, student support for and involvement in service learning, community participation and partnerships, and institutional support for service learning. The American Association of Colleges and Universities value rubric. Value stands for the valid assessment of learning in undergraduate education. And this model looks at diversity of communities and cultures, analysis of knowledge, of civic engagement and commitment, civic communication, civic activity and reflection, and civic context and structures. Then the Community Campus Partnership for Health Principles and Metrics is a model that advocates for authentic partnerships involving guiding principles, meaningful outcomes, quality processes, and transformational experiences. The SOFAR framework, this is a framework developed by Bringle, Clayton, and Price. And this model really focuses on partnerships and the relationships that partners have, and suggests that these relationships exist on a continuum of closeness. So the model is a structural framework for relationships and looks at the quality of interactions and outcomes in our partnerships. The ripple effect is a mind mapping technique. It is a qualitative procedure for looking at the impact of our projects. It's an opportunity for visual mapping and visual representation of community change, usually involving a facilitated discussion, sharing of stories and examples, and that includes those unintended consequences that may come out of our partnerships and our projects as well. And finally, the Carnegie Foundation elective classification for community engagement is a framework for categorizing higher education institutions. And this particular elective classification for community engagement is for recognizing the wonderful commitments of some institutions toward the public purpose of higher education. And the process of applying, the process of developing an application can help document the social impact of an institution. I also wanted to share
one minute.
Okay, perfect. The logic model, which is another visual representation of the work we do and kind of the process of developing a project from the situation through those longer term outcomes, and can also help to consider how you can use formative and summative evaluation all across your project. This is an example of a metrics by the University of California, Berkeley, for thinking about what data you're going to collect, what data you already have, who owns the data, how that data is gathered, or how you could gather that data, and how frequently it should be gathered. And these last few slides, which I'll just go through very quickly, I'll let Martina go through them very quickly, are ones for you to think about. Who are you measuring the impact for? What's the aim of measurement? Who is impacted by the work that you're doing? And how can you involve those individuals in the evaluation process? Who will you communicate the impact to? And how will you communicate that impact? And then again, really elevating the importance of participatory approaches to evaluation that involve those who are the recipients of the work, have them be part of those evaluation processes. And finally, a last slide on considerations of just really elevating the importance of equity and access, diversity, reciprocity, and community benefit in these partnerships and in this work to measure the good work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Audrey. It's a wonderful colleague to work with, and I'm very happy to present with her. So I'm Martina Jordan. I'm Head Community Engagement Research at the University of Pretoria, and I'm working specifically on it in a township campus, Mamelodi campus. My main focus is to engage with communities through projects involving students enrolled in curricular community engagement. Also, I work a lot with staff, international staff, and students, and then of course with local profits and community organizations. So just a little bit of a background about the University of Pretoria to have everything in context. We have 9 faculties, about 56,000 students, 7 campuses, and about 122 undergrad programs. Our University of Pretoria also embed curricular community engagement in the modules or the curriculum. And last year there was 226 modules with curricular community engagement involving more than 20,000 students. that worked in 323 sites. And very important, last year, under the leadership of Prof. Ferris, we started a framework and a toolkit that I will share a little bit later with you. So I'm working at the Mamelodi campus. That is one of our community engagement hubs of the University of Pretoria. And on this campus, we have the Business Hub from the Faculty Economic Sciences, Urban Studios from the Faculty of Theology and Religion, and the Animal Health Clinic. My focus is very much on digital literacy, assisting and developing early childhood development phase practitioners, modern technologies, art, and I do a digital storytelling project with the Historical Society of Mamelodi. So we started under the leadership of, like I said before, of Prof. Ferris, a framework and toolkit last year to assist lecturers that are embarking on community or curricular community engagement modules, and to show them what is the steps and how do they get to the point where we want to be in the talk today. So it's divided in nice 3 phases. That first we need to get the curricular community engagement and context. Then it must go into action. And then of course you need to assess and you need to determine what is the social impact and the sustainability. And first of all, it's to build in the context steps, it is to build capacity. Thereafter, you roll your program out or your curricular community engagement module, and then you do that in collaboration and co-design with your partners. And then lastly, you monitor, evaluate, and report, and conduct student assessments. And then number 7, like I indicated there, the final one is learning, improving, and ensuring sustainability for impact. And that is divided in 4 clear steps that we are doing. First of all, collective review of the range of curricular community initiatives. And there we have a yearly curricular community engagement conference where staff can share their best practices. Then we celebrate successes, not only successes of the modules or the courses, but also of the staff, and then understand the different similarities and the different contexts, and then we focus on collective impact. Now, to further go on with the session, I would like to use the toolbox of towards the European Framework for Community Engagement in Higher Education that aims to provide a framework for universities to understand and assess and enhance their community engagement efforts. The idea of this toolbox is to guide universities to identify their current community engagement practices, reflect on the achievements and areas for improvement in the engagement efforts, and engage in collaborative discussions with community stakeholders to develop a more strategic and impactful approach to the community engagement. I adapted this toolbox a little bit, this tool a little bit, to reflect on how we assess and evaluate impact at the University of Pretoria. Because we have so many modules and we are so huge, we do it mostly on micro level, in faculty level, in community module level, and therefore I adapted this toolbox. Okay, let me just go from point to point. First of all, the faculty, how do we measure that? So they do get as awards and recognition. And we also look at the academic research outputs related to community engagement. Then in teaching and learning, we determine the number of students, like I showed you before, the number of modules, the case studies, and then also studies over a period of time. And then service and knowledge, the range of societal needs that we address. And then very important, the community partners. We want to move our community partners from exploitive community partners to transformative community partners, from unattached community partners to mentors. We want a diversity of community partners and a range of communities. And we do that, for instance, with site visits. When Audrey and I did a project together in South Africa, we went from site to see if there's implementation, if there is a change. And then, of course, the feedback from the communities. And for that, I also did surveys to the communities. The communities do assessment of the students. So there is a feedback from the communities of the change. The students is the most important one. Is there any change in the students? They do it to various reflections, assignments, portfolios, vlogs, YouTubes. And then also very important for us, are students continuing with community engagement after they completed their degree? And for that, I, for instance, a few years ago, sent a survey out to all my alumni and asked, are you continuing with this community project, or was it just a once-off thing in your life? And that was specific for non-service related students that did show that it had the impact and that they did continue with community engagement. Then, of course, the broader community. Are they online activities? Are they involved with us? Very interesting that I now find at the Mamelodi campus that there's a lot of people volunteering that want to be part of our curricular community engagement projects and our projects. And then also their support management. Are there policies? Are there support structures? We have a wonderful community engagement unit that support us and help us with everything. We have University of Pretoria cars that can be used. And then the financial sustainability. Do the students have access to a little bit of money to help them with transport? And that's what we're doing at the camp, at the university, supporting students financially. And then, of course, the university. How do they see impact there on their website, their social media, the rankings? And every year, the SDG case for the SDGs, we write up then a number of case studies on the successes of the community curricular community engagement and the institutional spread. So if I reflect on behalf of Audrey and myself on this session, first of all, I would reflect on enhanced accountability and responsiveness. Evaluating community engagement efforts in higher education allows institutions to hold themselves accountable for their commitment to the community. This reflection indicates that regular assessment not only helps in measuring the effectiveness of initiatives, but also encourages universities to remain responsive to the evolving needs of the community. And then the next one, improving student learning outcomes. Through evaluation, it becomes evident that community engagement has a measurable impact on student learning and development. Reflecting on data collected reveals that students who participate in community-based projects often gain practical skills, increase empathy, and a deeper understanding of social issues. This emphasizes the importance of integrating community engagement into academic programs and curricula, and it enhances both educational experience and civic responsibility. Long-term partnership and sustainability for that, evaluating the impact of community engagement help in identify successful strategies that can be sustained over time. Reflecting on evaluation results can reveal patterns of effective collaboration between the university and the community organizations, highlighting successful partnerships that lead to lasting benefits. And these insights underscore the value of strategic planning and building enduring relationships that can contribute to both academic and community well-being. And the last slide is the references that we use for our presentation. And here are our emails if you want to contact us or discuss. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you for Audrey for co-presenting with me.
Thank you very much, Audrey, and Martina for that overview, really of taking us from what are the frameworks to how do we begin to practically implement this. So I'm going to ask our next speaker, Ms. Diana Hornby from the Rhodes University, to load her presentation. She is the director of the Community Engagement Division at Rhodes University, and Di, we're going to give over to you.
Thank you, Loretta. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Wonderful to be with you today. My part of the forum is to move away from the frameworks now and give you a really practical example of how universities measure their social impact. And the example I'm going to share with you today is the Vice Chancellor's Education Pathway Program. The purpose of this program is to revitalize public schooling in the city of Makanda, which is our city, in the Eastern Cape province, down south in South Africa. So just a little background before I start so we can put it all into context. In 2015, our current Vice Chancellor, Professor Sizwe Mabizela, repositioned the university in his inaugural speech. He said, "We're not only geographically located in the city, we are of and for the city." And he assembled a team and he made a commitment to the community in that speech to say, "We will help you and work with you to revitalize public education." And that's how the Vice Chancellor's Education Pathway Program was born. In fact, prior to the current Vice Chancellor, Dr. Salim Badat, the previous Vice Chancellor, had already started working on building relationships with schools. So this was on the back of that. The work of the Vice Chancellor's Education Pathway Program is embedded in the IDP. The vision is to generate and advance locally responsive and globally engaged knowledge that seeks to contribute to a just and sustainable society. So this vision of the university is what we contribute to. Now, when this committee was pulled together from external and internal stakeholders, we put together a strategic plan and we used some common points of departure which underpin the theory of change. I don't have time to go through them, but just getting you a sense of the process that we followed. So when it comes to measuring social impact of the Vice Chancellor's Education Pathway Program, it happens at three levels. The macro level, which is the citywide systemic change we will see. The meso level, which is at the sector. So although we started at the top end of schooling because one of the goals was access into our university for local disadvantaged students, we built a pathway all the way back to early childhood. So the sector levels are early childhood, primary and secondary schooling and post-schooling. And then at the micro level, I'll share with you today, zooming in on one of the programs and showing you a little bit about how we've measured impact at that level. So let's start with the macro citywide level. There are two benchmarks we use, one in the primary and one in the secondary schooling stages. The secondary one is the obvious one, which is grade 12 after at the last year of schooling, the National Senior Certificate. Now that is an examination which can provide us very good evidence of how impactful our programs have been. The one in the primary school, you'll all probably know about the Pearls research. This is international research which benchmarks reading for meaning or reading for comprehension at grade 4. So what we've done here, we have got BEd fourth year students partnered with Gadra Education and our Faculty of Education, and they test every grade 4 child in our city annually in February. Now we know the South African sector hasn't done very well in this test. 19% of the children in public schools can read for comprehension or read for meaning. So then the meso level, which is the sector level, you will see how we organize ourselves in these various sectors. The early childhood sector, primary schooling, high schooling, and post-schooling. And you will see at every level, we are very specific about the setting of goals and targets. And this is what we then measure ourselves against. At the micro level, and this is zooming down to the program level now, you'll see at each sector, we have a number of programs. There are 19 in total, from early childhood to post-schooling. And then we have some cross-cutting programs, which are things like teacher awards for motivation, school leadership courses, and a counseling hub, which is part of the psychology department, and an NGO. And they give free counseling to our students because the approach is very much holistic, not only academic support for students. So I'm zooming in now to one of the programs. If you look there, I highlighted, I chose one in the secondary schooling sector called the Grade 12, 9, 10s Mentoring Program. And I'm going to zoom in and just give you a few more details around how we track and do M&E at this level. So this is how we organize each program, with the clearly stated objectives, activities, outputs, and outcomes. And you can see the outcomes are very specific, these targets, and this is what we measure ourselves against. So, for example, in this program, that 1/3 of the grade 12s on this program will attain bachelor passes at the end of this year. That 90 of the young people, there are 200 in total, on the program will be accepted to Rhodes universities to study for first year. The pass rate will be a 90% pass rate across the program, and that 100 Rhodes mentors will be certified in an accredited short course. So this is a volunteer program. It's not discipline specific. Anyone may join it if you're a student, and you first do an accredited short course before you get placed in a site. We expect a 95% attendance of these mentors. So that gives you a little idea. And then the strategies within this 9/10s program. How do we monitor the mentees, who are the grade 12 learners? How do we monitor the mentors, who are the Rhodes students mentoring? Generally, we have one mentor to 2 students. That's the ratio we use. And then how do we work with the community partners to monitor the program? And then lastly, how do we turn this incredible data that's generated into the scholarship of engagement? That for us is really important, that our staff work at the nexus of teaching, research, and community engagement. So we have an annual conference, a biannual conference, and we like the scholarship to be presented. We have publications, and then we've also started a journal for community engagement, which I'll draw your attention to in the last slide. So let's have a look now at the 2024 Makanda Education Summit. So we started this process intensely in 2015. So after 10 years, the Vice Chancellor called an education summit in the city, and he invited all stakeholders. Over 400 attended. And we looked at where we'd come from, taking stock, celebrating our success, and setting new goals collectively for the next
1 minute, Diane. 1
10
minute.
years. Right. So this, moving on to the impact now. And so at secondary school level, that is the division. I'm going to focus on the public fee exempt schools. Here you can see we've tabulated the results from 2014. I want to bring your attention to the top line, which is the cohort size. You can see our retention rate has just gone up very high. This is very exciting. 74% of the young people who enter grade 1 are writing matric, writing grade 12 exams. Number of passes increase each year, and of particular excitement is the bachelor pass. In 2014, 193 bachelor passes, which have gone up to 377. This slide shows you the huge improvements in the fee-exempt schools. So those are the really the most under-resourced schools, and you can see how that has grown. This is a slide which is fascinating because it shows in the first pie chart, the biggest slice was the bachelors that were produced by the fee-paying public schools. In the second chart, which is last year's results, show how the no-fee schools have taken over, and they have in fact produce more bachelors, and that is what has pushed up the percentage of bachelors. So the pie chart, you could say, has flipped. Another slide which shows much the same. A quick look at the primary school sector. Reading for meaning, nationally, 19% of children can read for meaning in this country. In 2024, in our city, 40% of children can read for meaning, and in February this year, it's gone up to 45% of children can read for meaning. So in conclusion,
can I ask that we end here? Otherwise, we're going to run out of time, and we're not going to have time for Megan to have some Q&A.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Di. I think this is really giving us an indication of how you can have, wherever your context is, you can have impact, and you can have impact that is measurable. So thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Megan. Megan Donnelly is the Director of Social Impact and Evolution at UNSW Sydney. Megan, over to you.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen, one moment. So UNSW's been on a journey to centre societal impact in our strategy, and that's been really critical to getting the commitment and the buy-in from leadership to do what we're just embarking on now. So I'll speak about how we have embedded societal impact into our new strategy, which was released earlier this year and is a 10-year strategy. Then I'll scaffold our approach to university-wide measurement and evaluation of impact, and we're about 6 weeks into that. So we are early days, but I wanted to share some early thoughts about how we're doing it and the process. And then I can give an example of our Gateway program and how they measure impact because they do it pretty well in our context. So embedding our societal impact in our strategy started with, when we were setting out to design the strategy, was starting with some very clear guiding principles. I'll focus in on the last one, which was societal impact amplified. And these 4 principles guided the approach that we took and what we ended up selecting to go into the strategy. And the fact that, I mean, the other 3 are probably more typical of a strategy in terms of the principles to guide. But the last one was really emphasised by our Vice Chancellor, Attila Brungs. And it really did mean that from start to end, that societal impact became the foundation of the strategy. It was hugely consultative. We ran, I mean, you can see the numbers here in terms of students engaged, staff involved, and in particular, we ran these really in-depth, about 12 of them, consultation workshops where there were about 40 to 50 people in each, cross-faculty, and that was really, and it reached about 500 staff, and they were about 2-3 hours long. And it was really about exploring what societal impact meant, where we were strong, where we had gaps, what capabilities were needed. And that, again, really meant that we got strong buy-in from across the university once the strategy was released. We also engaged our alumni and other external partners, government, and community in that process as well, and our local Indigenous community as well. So the strategy has 9 pillars. Of those pillars, 5 of them are our impact pathways and 4 are the impact focus areas. And these set our priorities, our ambition, and our direction. So the impact pathways are essentially a bit more typical of a university. They are, they're about our transformative education, our innovative research, our genuine engagement with our partnerships and our communities. And then the last two are pillar 4 or impact pathway 4 is around our culture and our people, and 5 is around improving our environment so that we're sort of more agile and more effective in the way that we work. Sorry, bear with me. The impact focus areas are what differentiated this strategy from the rest. And they sat alongside the other 5 impact pillars that you saw, the impact pathways. And these are areas that connect some of the most pressing socioeconomic, environmental, and health challenges of our time with areas that we learnt from those consultations I spoke about earlier, that we were uniquely placed to influence and impact locally and around the world as UNSW based on our strengths across our many faculties and disciplines. So they're accelerate the transition to sustainable society and planet, advance economic and social prosperity, enable healthy lives, strengthen societal resilience, security, and cohesion. These impact focus areas are also accompanied by our cross-cutting themes with Indigenous knowledges at the centre. And these cross-cutting themes, inclusion, integrity, social justice, and Indigenous knowledges, are critical to how we pursue all of those impact focus areas and all those, all the goals that we have underneath them. And so we'll ensure that those cross-cutting themes essentially are the values by which we pursue these, and it'll also be critical to the way that we measure impact across our strategic initiatives. So I spoke to the impact focus areas, which essentially give us our direction and our focus in the strategy and around which the whole strategy was essentially designed. And now we're turning to impact evaluation. And the impact evaluation its purpose essentially is to capture and elevate the impact across everything that we do. So it's not just research and education, although they are obviously core, but also how we engage and our operations and governance practices as well. And the goal is to keep us accountable for societal change and to learn and improve, but also to inspire and engage our different partners that we work with, whether it be government, local communities, the public, industry partners, because they're all critical to our pursuit of, the label of our strategy is progress for all. And this was a quote from the strategy I thought really summarised how our Vice Chancellor and the leadership see societal impact as so central to what we do. So ultimately our success will come from realising others' success and the collective success we strive for in progress for all. It will be how others see and experience our progress as much as how we track it ourselves. So look, that has just given us such a strong backdrop for doing this university-wide evaluation, and it's critical because it means that our pursuit of this will be tied into our mission, our values, and all the strategic initiatives are pulling in the same direction. So our approach is there's 4 stages. So the first stage, we're setting up our objectives and our guiding principles so that everything that we measure, we can check that they are within those guardrails and heading and answering those objectives. Then we're establishing our approach and the indicators. And then once we sort of get our scaffolded approach correct, and then essentially the framework, we'll be looking at benchmarking and baselining. We'll be looking at specifying the methods and the cadences. And then a key part of this is also operationalizing it. So being very clear on resources and responsibilities, the data governance, investing in upskilling, and ensuring that we automate where we can. And all the while we'll be, again, taking it, ensuring that we embed targeted consultation so we understand the diverse perspectives across the uni and our partners and aligning to global best practice. You can see here, these are sort of on the right, there are some of the people that we'll be consulting with externally, and on the left, here are some of the groups that will really be influential internally. And along the bottom are just some of the external indexes or frameworks or indicator banks that we'll be looking at, such that our work can be easily sort of translated and comparable and the data as interoperable as possible. We also just made sure that we could translate the way we were categorizing our work and our pursuit of our impact focus areas back into the SDGs as well, which was easy enough to do. And essentially, our societal impact framework will be used to assess. We're splitting our strategy into 3-year triennium roadmaps, and a lot of the insights we'll get from the societal impact measurement will essentially feed into and inform the next 3-year roadmap, trying to break a 10-year strategy down into something a bit more responsive and iterative as well, while acknowledging it's not linear. It's going to be a sort of a lot more complex and a lot more messy than what I've depicted here. So we've started with, as I said, the objectives, and again, accountable for change, learn and improve, inspire and engage. And it's that middle one, learn and improve, that really dictates the level of detail or the depth of data and the understanding of the context around the indicators that we choose. And it's really going to guide the depth that we need to go to there. So we're combining in trying to create a framework for this huge task.
1 minute, Megan. One minute.
Thank you. We're essentially taking our 4 core capabilities that is the same for most universities and breaking them down into these impact pathways. So each of the blue boxes sort of answers the question, how do we have impact through education? How do we have impact through research? How do we have impact through engagement, etc.? And then combining it with scaffolding the indicators through this lens of outputs, which we already measure, outcomes, which is reach and traction, impact, which is seeing a behavior and system change, and then that ultimate impact, which is seeing big conditions change around our 4 impact focus areas. An example of the gateway admission program that we have for students from a underrepresented background. So these programs support students on their journey to university from years 10 and 12. The programs essentially are broken down into the map, the compass, the key, and the guide. The map being acknowledging that there's information students need. The compass is acknowledging the difficulty of navigating universities. The key being academic attainment, and the guide essentially having student mentors to help guide the incoming students across that whole process. And we're looking for that shift from reach, capacity, behavior, and impact. Essentially, we're able to kind of run that through the framework, and really that last impact, well, a lot of places stop at have the students applied, have they commenced? We're really looking at success rates and retention rates as well, ensuring that these students are successful at university. And we're early days exploring, can we even look at alumni measures of social mobility?
Thanks, Megan. We have to stop here as we now want to leave. We have 10 minutes. I do want us to share at least some of our questions that may be burning questions. So I see that we have been joined by quite a number of people from all across the world. I'm going to ask for some questions and comments. Like I said, please put them into the chat box. I'm not seeing any as yet. Miranda, if you can see, please help me. I see, Kalinga, you said you're from University World News and you have a couple of questions, but I don't see any. Just want to note, especially from Megan, we've sort of seen this connection between what Aubrey has indicated and the importance of connecting your impact to your strategy, and so maybe I can just kick us off, Megan, by asking the question. Then, if you have a long-term view, are you able to already see that your strategy, which sounds like it has really been a collaborative process of strategy making, is actually yielding some real measurable impacts.
What we learned through the process was one, and we had a sense of this already, that, I mean, and like many universities, there's so much impact going on already, and this is giving the space and the channels for that to be elevated and celebrated more and supported. And then, look, we did release the strategy earlier this year, as opposed to necessarily seeing yet more impact as a result, where it's more about identifying and understanding the impact we're already having more, and seeing that initiatives and programs are prioritized now based on the strategy, and so you're seeing an elevation of the strategic initiatives that are driving impact, and also people are talking about and starting to understand what it means to go from an output through to an impact. So it's going to be a long journey, but it's definitely got a lot of buy-in through the university at the moment.
Thanks, Megan. And then I see in the chat there's a question for Martina. Martina, when you are trying to get community engagement, I guess this is within your coursework, is it used to assist in assessing students, and what is the community getting out of it in return? So really, what is in it for the students, what is in it for the community, especially as in curricular community engagement?
Okay, so we really tried to make the community partners co-designers of the courses, and it's very important that they also take the responsibility to assess the coursework or the outcomes of the projects and what the students did with them. And I think that is making them co-facilitators and making them more responsible. We want to move them to mentors instead of just observers and acceptors of everything. And if they are mentors later on, then that is part of that development of the community. I think it's very important to get them as part of the assessment team. Otherwise, they don't take really responsibility. Every module is doing it differently. So some just sent you a Google form, some you get an interview with them. So I did now a group with health sciences where they actually came and interviewed me to see how was my experience, because sometimes I'm the community, not so much the lecturer. And that is very important for me. So I don't think it's always what is in it for me. What it in it for me is to ensure that the students are developed and having a wonderful experience. And I think for the students, it's also that they are most responsible if the community is actually assessing them. I hope that's answering your question.
Okay, and then there is a question around what, and this is really to whoever wants to take this. You've highlighted positive outcomes. What are the limitations or challenges? And I'm going to frame this within the context of the conversation. In terms of measuring impact, what are the limitations and what are the challenges? Maybe I can ask Di to take that one.
Thank you, Loretta. I think, the quantitative assessment is relatively easy. But I think it's the qualitative assessment, to looking at issues like, transformation, personal and collective, looking at social justice, epistemic justice. How do we measure the more qualitative items of that? So I think that's one of the really big challenges. So moving from a transactional approach to community engagement to something much deeper and transformational. For us, I think that's probably the biggest in the context of what we're speaking about today.
Thank you. And then there's a question around, there's a question, Martina, on the TEFCA tool. Maybe you can just answer that in the chat box and whether it's publicly available. But
Yes.
there's a question from Raimundo around describing some of the processes that you follow in making community co-designers of the curriculum, but I also want to say co-designers of evaluating impact. Maybe I can ask Aubrey to kick us off, and then other people can add. But Martina, can you please answer the question in the chat about the tool?
I'll do that.
Okay, Aubrey?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I think this is a great question and an important issue. It makes me think about a project that I'll tell you about really, really quickly that I've been involved with for, I would say, a good decade, or perhaps just over a decade, and actually just presented at a local conference here with our nonprofit partner just earlier within the past week. It's a partnership where students, graduate students in some of our courses focused on youth development and school family community partnerships do mentoring of local urban youth around the high school application process. And so there's an example where we've been working extremely closely with our partners on the partnership, as well as kind of monitoring and evaluating our success and having really exceptional impact where these youth who are part of their program and part of our mentoring initiative have been accepted and gone on to some of the best institutions in the US, as well as just generally been successful in getting financial aid and going on to the colleges or other post-secondary pathways of their choice. I think that just having a strong basis of ongoing communication and trust, and again, that long-term partnership where you're really collaborating and working as equals in the partnership, and just involving those partners every step of the way in all the decision making, and as much as possible in kind of charting the pathway of the program is the best way to go ahead. When you have the engagement of the partners and are really sharing the experience together and kind of reflecting on the experience together, it becomes, an exceptional partnership and initiative, and I think really has the kind of impact that we're looking for.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. We have run out of time. I just want to I just want to do a final closure. But whilst I'm doing that, Megan, maybe you can just go and see there's some very specific questions that are posed to you, and perhaps you can address them in the chat box. And whilst you are doing that, I want to just close us off by thanking all the speakers. I think you've all come from very different perspectives, and you bring us very different ways of thinking about impact, going from the sort of very theoretical, which I think is very important, because we need to ultimately base our work in a theoretical foundation, but also connecting it to our universities in a very specific way around our mission, our vision, our strategy, and ensuring that our strategies are in fact a living strategy. And then the very concrete difference that we make. And Di, I'm very, very struck by the way that you are able to show in qualitative terms and quantitative, very specifically quantitative terms, how you are making a difference in an area that is a major challenge, not just in South Africa, but I think in many other parts of the world. So thank you all of you for your contribution. Thank you to Miranda and the USRN team for really making this possible. Your support to us has been amazing. And then to all of our participants from across the globe, thank you for joining us, and thank you for the wonderful questions. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening further. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank
Goodbye.
you so much.
Thanks, Dorita.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.